You're watching Candid Talk at Tech TV. Today we are discussing very complicated debate regarding identity politics and complexities of multiculturalism. I'm joined with a very dynamic commentator, Arshad Mahmood. Welcome, Arshad Mahmood.
Thank you, Tahir. Thank you, Tag TV, for inviting me and to participate and add my 2 bits into the conversation that has been happening for quite a while now. I saw your previous programs on a similar subject, and they were quite enlightening. May or may not agree or disagree with more or less of the content of the program and what the people had to say or share their thoughts. But it is always enlightening to understand what other people are thinking. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. And so Arshad, how would you like to comment when we talk about identity politics? Because personally, you've been through yourself as you...
When you ask me that question, how I would like to comment on identity politics, then my simple phrase and my simple request would be, stop it. Okay? Because identity politics has got more to lose for a country like Canada than we have to gain from identity politics. Now, I understand where the series of conversations and program, the latest issues and episodes have been coming from, and where this question and discussion basically stems from, besides what we have been discussing over the past so many years. Every single time that I've been on your shows, we, one way or the other, do touch the topics of multiculturalisms. We do touch the topic of identity politics. We have dedicated quite a few episodes on these subjects as well, but it's always good to refresh our memories and bring back, like a flashback once again, things that we talked in the past, and the logical conclusion or the logical process that is continuing because of whatever has been done in the past in the name of identity politics, or which can be categorized as the identity politics and multiculturalism. Multiculturalism, to start with, is a great asset that we have. The unique multiculturalism that we see comparing Canada and the US, for example, the 2 closest examples of multiculturalism are US and Canada. What we see in US is the melting pot. What we see in Canada is not the melting pot, but every person in every community can maintain and continue.
Sort of ghettoization.
I wouldn't say ghettoization. Ghettoization is what you will make of it. The culturalism or the multiculturalism does not, as a matter of fact, warrant or does not necessarily mean that you're going to lead or it's going to lead you towards ghettoization. Ghettoization is something that happens when extreme multiculturalism that Mr. Maxine Bernier was also talking about, that occurs. And let me give you an example. Who promotes the extreme multiculturalism? Who is promoting the identity politics? And what's going on in the name of multiculturalism? And how to distinguish between a multiculturalism which is positive, which is good, which is beneficial for the country, and a extreme multiculturalism which is completely to the contrary. When Mr. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of this country, walks into a mosque to address a group of Muslim voters, he is giving rise to identity politics. He is playing identity politics. When Mr. Maxine Bernier, who comes from the province of Quebec, who has a long history of suffering through identity politics and through a denial of multiculturalism in the beginning, when he gives a comment such as the one that we have been listening to the reaction of people in the past few weeks or so, he is also playing identity politics. He is also identifying certain communities and closing them into a predetermined or kind of a profile, which is absolutely not at all healthy for our country. So, who is playing identity politics in this country? Everybody is. Every single politician is playing identity politics. What happens? Who are the people who lose in the game of identity politics? Is people like us. People like us, when people look at it, when these politicians look at you and me, they say, oh, we're looking at Pakistani Canadians, that's one identity. Or we're looking at Muslim Canadians, that's the second identity. Or we're looking at, no, stop looking at it.
So they treat us as entities.
These are predetermined groups of people, kind of profiles in which they pick you up, they put you in, that's a slot, a circle in which your circle goes in, and that's where you stay. So who are you? So if they want to talk to you, they're going to the closest mosque. If they want to talk to you, they're going to Pakistani Community Center. No, stop doing that. This is absolutely not fair. And who is actually playing a very important role and a very negative role in this whole process is the people who are receptive to that. So if somebody categorizes me in that identity and it wants to use that identity for his own political purposes, I should be the one who should stand up and say, stop that, I shall not allow that. But our communities, unfortunately, are allowing that to happen. So when the weakness is within our own files, then you cannot go out and complain 100% or solely and put the blame on the other person. They are politicians, they're going to play with you. Are you going to let them play with you? Are you going to let them play and use those tactics which are really not Canadians? So much so to the extent, when we talk about the extreme multiculturalism that Maxine Bernier is referring to, it is extremely poisonous for the country. Because that's what promotes ghettoization. That's what does not have inclusion. That's what does not allow integration. That's what does not allow so many other, that's what leaves the Canadian identity somewhere on the back burner. So it's the Pakistani Canadian identity, it's the Muslim Canadian identity, it's the young male identity, the first generation immigrant identity. So all of these identities, we have to, when we talk about the politics in Canada, we have to forget about all of these identities. We got to talk about one single identity, and that is Canadian identity. Who's going to talk about the Canadian identity? Who's going to talk about the Canadian culture? Who's going to talk about Canadian mainstream culture? Because Mr. Justin Trudeau denies it. He even denies the existence of a mainstream culture in Canada. So obviously, when you deny a common bonding element and component and factor in this whole community and society, then there are other who come in to take the place and fit in those little vacuums which are left because of the absence of the mainstream culture. So these little cultures start coming in and they form the ghettos that you see.
Right. So what would you and I make out of it when we hear some of our so-called Pakistani or Punjabi community leaders, they go to voters and they say, we are running as candidate and you need your voice in federal government or provincial government or municipal government. And you happen to run as a candidate of municipal ward. So what was your experience based on my sort of a...
That's again identity politics, which is a no-no. It should not exist. Identity politics in any which way, shape or form must not exist from the outside. Identity politics may exist from the inside, a group of people which feel that they have been marginalized. If there is a proper evidence-based fact in broad daylight, which demonstrate that a certain community has been neglected, has been marginalized or something or the other without their own fault. Yes, that identity politics, that marginalization, that needs to be addressed. But what we are doing, and we means the Muslims, Pakistanis and first generation Canadians, you talked about my experience in the municipal politics. It was heartbreaking. It was disheartening. And after that first experience, I said, you know what? This community, which is Mississauga, is still not ready for a unbiased, non-partisan election. Because people were voting and people were telling to vote and not to vote for or against me based on my faith, based on my creed, based on my ethnicity, there was a question asked during my launching ceremony in which they said, they asked me if we would want Pakistani Canadians to be participating and have a representation in the legislature, and I said, no, this is not how I look at it. I would fight, or I would run and contest in an election, and I would work hard as a Canadian to be elected as a Canadian, not representing any specific community on the basis of color, race, creed, ethnicity. And once I am elected, it's great if I belong to the first generation Pakistani community in Canada. It is excellent if I am a Muslim and I belong to the first generation Muslim immigrants in this country. But let that not be the fact that brings me to the parliament. I don't want to go into the parliament to tell them that, hey, I'm a Muslim, so elect me, there's not enough Muslim representation. That is the identity politics that I do not want to ever to be a party to. And that's the identity politics that you saw in our current Erin Mills elections as well, in Mississauga Centre election as well on a provincial level. It's nothing but chaos. It's nothing but denial of basic human values. It's nothing but denial of our Canadian Charter of Rights. It's nothing but denial of our basic Canadianness. Who's going to be a Canadian? If everybody's going to be a Pakistani Canadian, Italian Canadian, Portuguese Canadian, then who at the end of the day is going to be a Canadian? That is a very serious question. And when you talk about ghettoization, this is what you get. When this kind of things started happening, this is what you get. Identity politics, extreme multiculturalism. That's what you get, ghettoization. You get ghettos.
So what are the parameters we could use to stop this identity politics cart?
It's a catch-22. At this time, we have been, and if you recall, we have been discussing on these subjects, we have been talking on these subjects, and I've been, through your media, and I've been quite vocal and I've been quite open and honest and frank about how I feel and what I feel, because this has been going on for a long time. This is not something new. Every single politician in this country plays the identity politics. Every single voter here, at least those that we are talking about, they participate in that identity politics. So how do you stop it? You can't bring in a law tomorrow or legislate that we will stop talk. You have to change the thought process. You have to change how people think. You have to inspire people to integrate into community and form one Canadian community. And they can live. We can all live with our different levels of our identities. We all have different levels of identities. I'm a man, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Pakistani born, I speak English, I speak Spanish. These are all my identities. But where is my Canadian identity? When it comes to the election and politics, we only have to rely upon and include the Canadian identity and nothing but Canadian identity. The Canadian values, the Canadian politics, these interferences, these interventions which come from other people should not be allowed. They must never be allowed. And I give credit to Maxine Bernier in indicating the extreme multiculturalism and identity politics, and I give credit to everybody else who talks about it. But can I suggest today how to stop it? It's a process. It's a mind-changing process. Can you change the thought process of all those people in Erin Mills who shouted against one of the candidates that she was an Ahmadi and people should not vote for her? Can you change the thought process and the mind and thinking of those people who were shouting slogans against me when I was running in the election, that I am from an Ahmadi faith? Can you stop the thought process of all those people who actually stood in a mosque and said, do not vote for a woman, working under the leadership of a woman who was the head of the party at that time? So all of these hypocrisies, all of these unnecessary interventions.
When you talk about mosques participating to not vote women. But on the other hand, we see they have also helped electing women such as Ikra Khalid.
Well, the premier herself was a woman at that time.
Right.
So the premier of the province and the party that you're talking about is also a woman. So and a woman also who is openly belongs to a LGBTQ. So that is another identity that's there. So how can you get up and say that, yeah, one woman is good, the other woman is not good, or one woman we are going to let her into the mosque, the other one we will not. One woman we will vote for, the other one we will. This is the hypocrisy. This is the problem. These are the dirty political games that all these people are playing. But how long can they play? You saw the result. What happened? PC? It was a slide.
Right.
It was a slide, simple. Because one, times are changing.
Right.
People are getting sick and tired of what these people do. People, voters at large, are getting sick and tired of talk, yap, no results at the end of the day. We live in the greatest province, the greatest city, the greatest country in the world. Who the hell cares? Who the hell cares? Next time somebody comes and tells me, oh, you don't know how good you immigrants have in this country. You live in the most beautiful country and the best possible country in the world. So do you, sir. So do you. Absolutely. So go back and make some laws. Go back and do some legislation. Go back and do some legislation for social, economic, financial progress, development of the country, foreign policy. Go and do your job. I put you into the parliament to do that job. I didn't put you into the parliament to tell me how to say my prayers or to come into the mosque and give them whatever funding.
For Islamophobia studies and all those things.
I didn't give you that vote to go out and talk about Islamophobia, because if there wasn't an Islamophobia before, now you see it, and you will see it even more, because that's a reaction.
Absolutely.
That's a reaction. How long can you push your ideas on people which really don't sit well in a community such as the Canadians? It doesn't fit very well.
I would also like to remind our viewers about your great achievement in terms of staging North America's largest multicultural festival in Mississauga. And what we observe, that it's not kind of a ghettoization. You bring everybody there, though that festival has more South Asian flavor, more South Asian colors, but you engage all Canadians in it, and you do not bring any religious card or even any ethnic card. So is it the success model, I would say, in terms of...
Because that's multiculturalism.
Right.
I love multiculturalism.
That's the true
That is the true multiculturalism, where you use different cultures and the commonalities of people and bring them together. People come together because of language. People come together because of dresses. People come together because of food. So you have to find common elements. Once you find the common elements, then they all become one. They can still continue maintaining their culture and the beautiful things and the thousands of years old history and heritage that they bring with us, or that we bring with us to this country. We can still continue owning that. We can still continue celebrating that. We can still continue being a part of that community, but at the same time, where is Canada? What's going on to Canada? Who's going to take the ownership of Canada? Who's going to be a Canadian? If everybody is Pakistani Canadian, Indian Canadian, Italian Canadian, Portuguese Canadian, then who is Canadian? Where is Canada? Have we ever stopped to think? In retrospect, when we say who is Canadian, I mean who owns the Canadian culture? Where is the Canadian culture? Who's promoting the Canadian culture? Who is doing what for Canadian culture? Because your Prime Minister has completely denied a mainstream Canadian culture. He says it doesn't exist. So if it doesn't exist, then it's a country without a culture.
Right. So as you are mentioning hyphenated Canadians, unfortunately, Canadian parliamentarians of Pakistani origin, for instance, when they write Pakistani Canadian, that really hurts me, because they are not just ordinary citizens. They are serving Canadian Parliament. So what do you make out of this?
It's not what I make out of that, it's what they make out of that. Okay? Why do they do that? What is the need to emphasize on a fact that is already clearly bright, like a bright daylight, everybody can see that? Do I not know that this person is Pakistani Canadian or a Canadian of Pakistani origin? Do I not know that already? I know that already. So there's a very interesting phenomena, and George Carlin, I consider him as a prophet for this century, a little sarcastic, but I do follow him in lots of things that he talks about. So one of the things that he talks about is, people say, oh, I'm a proud Pakistani. What do you mean you're a proud Pakistani? Or I'm a proud Portuguese, I'm a proud Italian. What do you mean you're a proud Italian? What do you mean you're a proud Pakistani? How can you be proud of something in which you did not have to do anything? It is not a resultant of your own effort that you were a Pakistani. So you can't be a proud Pakistani. You can't be a proud of what? You were born because your mom and dad were in that country, so you were born in that country. I'm a proud Muslim. Yeah, right. You didn't accept Islam. You didn't embrace Islam. You were born a Muslim. So what do you mean you're a proud? I am a proud Canadian because I'm Canadian by choice. I had a choice not to be a Canadian, but I chose to be a Canadian. So I am a Canadian by choice. I am a proud Canadian by choice. And that is why it hurts me when people talk about a non-existence of a mainstream culture in Canada, non-existence of a mainstream ideology in Canada. It doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be like that. So if I have to rub it in people's face that I am a Pakistani Canadian, so Pakistani community should vote for me, then you know what? I should go back to school and learn my politics. I should go back to school and learn the good politics. That's what I need to do. I can't be, of course, I speak the same language, we share a lot of history, culture, all these things, maybe some relatives as well, maybe your grandfather knew my grandfather, so all of those things, fine, dandy, good. What about, what are you going to do? Your job is to go and legislate. Your job is to go and make laws. I need to know what laws are you going to make? How are you going to improve my situation of my ward, my constituency, my riding, my province, my city, my country? How are you going to bring Canada back on the world map? We are not on the world map right now, trust me. We are not on the world map. We are slipping and sliding. It's not that bad, but we are not number one anymore. We are not number two anymore. And there is a reason. On diplomatic front, we are having issues. Saudi Arabia, US, NAFTA, Mexico, you name it, and we are having issues.
China, India, Japan.
I'm not going to say it's a complete failure as yet because the process still goes on, but we are having very tough time. It's not easy to be a Canadian these days. Gone are the days. I hear so many times, oh, we are peacekeepers. Yeah, you're peacekeepers, that's why you're selling $10 billion worth of arms and ammunition to Saudi Arabia. All right, great. Excellent, good peacekeepers. So stop saying things that don't make sense. I didn't come off the boat yesterday. I've been here for 20 years now. And I've seen 20 years worth of experiences. And I have met 20 years worth of people. And I have made 20 years worth of friends. And I've made 20 years worth of enemies as well. So next time you talk to me, and this is a message for my politicians. Next time you talk to me, next time you talk to anybody, stop playing the identity politics. Tell us the merit. Tell us what you are going to do. Tell us where you stand on certain issues. That's what I'm interested in knowing. I'm not interested in knowing that you come from Lahore or you come from Rawalpindi or you come from Tanganyika. I am not interested in knowing that. I am interested in knowing what you're going to do to make this country the greatest country again. That's what I want to know.
Thank you very much, Arshad, for your very vibrant and dynamic talk.
Thank you for having me.
Viewers, you just watched Arshad Mahmood's candid talk on the issues of multiculturalism and identity politics. Thank you for watching today's show.